Hello, welcome to the Zero Proof Life YouTube channel. I am Coach Carolyn.
And I'm Coach Brandi.
Yes, thank you, Brandi. It's good to see you.
Yeah, likewise,
And
Carolyn.
so, yeah, we are talking today about somatic experience, somatic experiences. And Brandi, my knowledge of it is minimal. So I would just like to ask you if we could just dive right in and you could explain what somatic experience is.
Absolutely, Carolyn. I'm happy to. So I'm excited to be discussing this today because for me it has been a really, I would say, very enlightening part of the alcohol process and journey. Like for people who are working to quit or stop or cut back on drinking, it's really, and I will start with saying so somatic experiencing. So I'm in the process right now of becoming a somatic experience practitioner, and what that means essentially is really giving people a place and a safe container to release past stress responses that have been incompleted that are in the body. And so that might sound a little obscure for people who are not familiar with somatic work at all, but somatic essentially just means in the body. Like that's really all the term itself means. And there's a lot of work and studies that have been done over the course of the last few decades, especially the last 50 years, in that the body really holds on to trauma, and it holds on to stress, and it holds on to things that are incomplete. Does it hold on to everything? No, absolutely not. But what it does is that it actually there's essentially this like imprinting that happens in our bodies when we go through traumatic experiences. And I'm doing a program that's under the studies of Dr. Peter Levine, who has been studying and practicing this since the early 1970s. And essentially, where he came from in this practice was looking at the animal response system when it came to stress. Like, you don't see animals out in the wilderness completely shut down and not able to, get up in the morning and not able to like move forward taking care of their young, whatever the case might be. They really, no matter what happens to them, they keep moving forward. And from the human aspect, it's quite different in that, there's a lot of times we end up getting very like either stuck in our lives, or we can get, kind of be in this place of safety that prevents us from moving forward in different areas of our life. Can maybe keep us in even physical responses, like, maybe we're someone who every time somebody walks into a room, we jump, behind, if anytime someone approaches behind us, even if it's someone safe, there is a startle that happens. Or, anytime we hear a loud noise, there's a startle that happens. Little things like that. You might, just ways to kind of make sense of this. And you can kind of see how there can sometimes be these sort of like physical just reactions that happen in our bodies without us. It's, there's no physiological awareness, or excuse me, there's no mental awareness there of this physiological response. And so that can sometimes indicate that there is a stress response that's incompleted somewhere in the body, something that just didn't get to finish. And so the beauty of this work is that there's an opportunity to actually complete it here and now, because the trauma is really what happens to the system. It's not so much about the event itself; it's about how your system reacts to it. And so as we're in this space and starting to like realize there's so much more science backing this up, and people are familiar, I think now these days, with the book The Body Keeps the Score. That's, it's on the shelves at Target now. And so there's a lot more awareness around this that's happening. And one of the things that really drew me into the somatic experiencing work was, as I have been working with people over the course of the last few years around alcohol use, I would notice that there were these like kind of hurdles that some people would run into, that they would have a hard time moving through and over. And, we would do a lot of work around the belief systems, and, the chemical dependence was not there. They were not in that, that 10% category, but really kind of being in this place of like this, kind of stuckness. And so as I started just following my own gut and diving further into this research as well, and learning more about the nervous system from a variety of places, I was like, okay, this is instinctively for me, this is what's going on. This is what's happening for people. And I started seeing examples of it in my own life. And so just to share how I experience, like how I experience this, I don't have like the startle response that I experienced that I shared with you. But for me, what happens in my life is I tend to really get like stuck in places. So like I feel like, oh, I can't go any further with this. There's no opportunity to move out of this. There's no other options available. So I tend to get into this like place where I get stuck, which is a way of the freeze response actually showing itself in real life, right? In day-to-day life. And so I found that that was my actual reaction. And so when I started doing this work, you go through and actually have like you can experiencing actual physical releases that happen as you're going through this process. And for me, it's been really telling for me like where some of this like stuckness has come from, and where I and and as I've gone through, going through this like release process, which for me, could mean like I do a little bit of shaking. I'm more aware of like allowing myself to just complete stress responses now, which I'll speak a bit more to in a moment. Um, but I notice that as I'm doing this work myself, I start moving forward. Like I have the capacity to move forward. I don't get as stuck as I used to. And so that has been really just telling and powerful for my own nervous system, because that's what we're working with. We're working with the autonomic nervous system in somatic experience work. We have different nervous systems in our body, but we're working with the autonomic nervous system specifically, which many people know about, like the sympathetic and the parasympathetic branches of that. And so that's really what we're working with in the somatic experience space. And so it's quite fascinating, because it's we all know about fight, flight, freeze, fawning. We know about these different things, but like how do they actually translate into our lives? And reality is like we're in and out of these different like stress cycles all day long. So I just want to really validate that for people first and foremost. Like we're going in and out of like parasympathetic, sympathetic, or sympathetic, parasympathetic. We're in and out of it all day. And what this work actually does is where there's like any, like if you picture maybe picture a river, and like if a beaver has been along and it's like created a little dam, or things like that, what we're working on doing is like as that river is flowing, anywhere the river gets stuck, like we're just working slowly but surely, like we're going to like unbuild that dam with the somatic work. So we're going to like take one piece of wood out, just by a little release, and then take another piece out with a little release, and then all of a sudden that river can flow again in that area. And so there's an opportunity for us to like really kind of rework and realign the experience that our body and our brain had, and then adjust those two, and make them come back in alignment. Like, because we're sitting here today having conversations, having gone through all of the experiences, all of the traumas that you and I have each gone through in our own lives. We're here today. But what happens with our body is our body can get stuck, or if it didn't get an opportunity to complete experiences, that it can get stuck in those places where those traumas happened. It's constantly living from that place of maybe fear, or it's having these like what feels like overreactions. There's those like overreactive responses, is because there's a blockage there somewhere. And so this creates a beautiful opportunity to like unwedge that blockage and get the body and the brain caught up to like in this place of like, hey, we're okay. Like we survived that thing. We're here today, and we're here because of it too, maybe. So that is a bit about just the explanation of what somatic experiencing is. And as I mentioned, I'm in training, so I'm not an official practitioner yet, but the beauty of this program is that I can bring it into people's lives and the work that I do with people at this point in stage. So I've got plenty more to learn yet, and I'm really excited about that. It's what's wonderful is it's a 3-year intensive program, and so it's not taken lightly. I mean, we're working with very tender parts of people's bodies, which is their nervous system. And so it's all about moving slowly, and at the level and capacity that each person's system is able to. And so just kind of as I'm talking about this, hopefully it makes sense, and where we can see kind of well, one thing I didn't talk about, but I do want to touch on um, that is like, okay, so why alcohol, right? Like why, because I realized I didn't come back around to that is like, why does this happen around, like, why did I want to start working around it with alcohol use? Well, here's the thing, like, when we are in either like an overactivated state in the sympathetic or parasympathetic, we can get stuck in the parasympathetic as well, like where we like can't get moving. We can't like move forward with something. These are both places where sometimes alcohol can come into use. So, I think, I don't know about you, Carolyn, but like for me, I would at the end of the day, like the end of the work day, be like, okay, that's it. I just needed to come down. I've been like revving all day. And so we'll say it was in the sympathetic state all day long. And I just need to get down. Like I need to come out of this. And so alcohol replicates that feeling of moving into the other state, one way or the other. I know.
Hmm.
So isn't that interesting?
That's fascinating. Yes.
Yeah. And so it replicates that in the moment. And so because of what it just does with what it does with the neurotransmitters. And so it's really fascinating how it replicates that. But then as you and I both know, you don't stay there. You don't stay in that state. It lasts for a moment, and then all of a sudden, like your cortisol is going crazy. And so, and your adrenaline is spiking. And so all these things are happening. And so then in that turn, you're actually like going back into a higher place in that sympathetic state. And so anyway, so that's where this kind of ties in for the work that I currently do right now, and that you and I do, is where this really ties into alcohol use and how it's being used. And so in that state, it's like, well, then what do we do? Right? Like, how do we adjust there? And and so what I like to do with people is, even if we're not doing somatic release work, is to actually bring in tools and resources that can help support the nervous system. And so we can like get into a different state, so that versus using an outside substance. And so that's really kind of coming full circle back to where we
Yeah.
started. So
So fascinating. So am I understanding correctly? Like, okay, if we're in this heightened state and we're going all day,
mhm.
and we are, assigning alcohol the role of bringing us down or calming us down or whatever language we're coming up with for ourselves, we're not allowing ourselves to complete that cycle, right? We're not allowing ourselves to come back into the, is it parasympathetic? I always get confused.
Yeah,
Um, State. Instead, we're bringing in like a natural substance to do that for us. Is that am I understanding that
basically,
correctly?
yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, that's basically a big part of this. And so yeah, like you said, we're assigning alcohol that role of bringing us into this other state. And so it really is incredible. So yeah, and so that's that like kind of stress cycle completion. We go up, and again, we're completing that cycle all day long, but we can also we can live in either a more elevated state or a lower state. And so we can assign alcohol that job of bringing us into that other state. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing you said that I thought was just so fascinating, I had never heard anybody explain it, because I am very familiar with like the startle reflex or even the freeze, where
Mhm.
I lose my voice and like I don't speak or move, literally.
Yes.
But I never applied it to, oh, this is how I feel when I'm stuck and I can't move forward in whatever it is that I'm striving for or
Yes.
life. Um, I never realized that that was also our bodies holding on to some of that. It's all so fascinating. So you do a great job
Yeah.
describing it and explaining it. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Carolyn. I appreciate that. Yeah, I feel like it's such a powerful thing. And I think that like the nervous system is such a hot topic right now,
Mhm.
but maybe people don't necessarily know or understand why, or like what to do with it, and be like, okay, well, I want to do these exercises,
Yeah.
or I'm going to try these exercises. But, it's also important. Just one thing that I want to mention is that it is important to recognize and kind of learn about the state that your system sort of lives in, or the default that you go to, right? Like, so you mentioned the freeze response, that you recognize that as a default for yourself. And so something interesting about the freeze response is that, so like you're stuck from doing something, but there's a lot of energy underneath that wants to come up and do something, but there's this like layer of stuckness. And so you think about that, and you think about like different mindfulness activities and things that are for, that support our nervous system. Well, something that would likely not support you is like saying, oh, when you're feeling that way, go meditate, right? Because like meditation is just going to like further intensify this down here. And so one of the things that's important is to like not feel like, I think we can get stuck in like, oh, well, I should be meditating every day, or I should be doing this particular movement exercise every day, or I should be doing yoga. Yoga is actually a very like sympathetic arousal, that depending on the type, like there's a lot of sympathetic arousal that happens. And so you think of somebody who's like in maybe more of a fight response, like they're going to be like, now, okay, coming in like after the
Yeah.
stressful day, and now I'm intensifying that stressful day in my system. And so I think it's really important for people to really just start to pay attention to what they notice in their own body when they do things. Does this feel good? Or am I fighting this thing? Is it
Yeah.
intensifying the thing I'm doing? Because I think there's a lot of assumption that like we just, if we do all these things, then they're going to be good for us. Like ice baths are really popular right now, right?
Right.
Ice baths are not good for my system. Like
Huh?
they do not support me they do not support me at a nervous system level right now. Maybe they
Yes.
will eventually, but right now, like it's not something that my body responds well to. I end up actually getting hives when I do them. So like from a physiological standpoint, we really have to pay attention and recognize like what's going
Right.
on and what's there, and what our body is telling us.
Right.
And the last thing I want to mention is around that is that a lot of times there's often people who are like, well, I don't know what my body's telling me because I shut down how my body feels a long time ago, and it was a lot safer to like just not feel what's going on in my body. And so I really also just want to bring light and attention to that, because I think it's very important to normalize that for people too. There are many people walking around on this planet that are not able to identify what's going on in their body, and it has been a way of staying safe. And
Right.
so this is where it's really important, again, to just work with your system and where it's at. So like for anyone who maybe is listening to this and recognizes that as themselves, like, I don't know what's happening in my body when these things are going on. For them, I would like suggest like saying, hey, can you just notice the edge of it? Or what does not knowing feel like? What is, how do you know you don't know what your
Uh-huh.
body feels like? Asking yourself questions just to get curious about that. Like, what is the edge? What would the edge of knowing feel like?
Yeah.
And just maybe like considering some questions like that,
Right.
or how do I, how do like, okay, so my hand, I don't know anything about how my hand feels right now.
Mhm.
Can I just focus? Can I just be with that, not knowing what
Right.
any sensations are in my hand right now? Like for me personally, I can sit here, I'm feeling, oh, my pinky's a little cold right
Mhm.
now. There's a little bit of energy in my hand. Like those are things I notice, but someone else that may be completely, there may be nothing there for them. And so can you just sit with them and not knowing and just be with that for a moment? And
Mhm.
maybe it's just being with one finger, and just allowing yourself to really step into that very lightly. So, and cautiously.
I love
Um,
this. I remember in the very first days of like even our training with life coach training, being asked to, how does that feel in your body? And I remember thinking, what in the world does that even mean?
yeah.
I mean, in my own personal journey, I've come a long way because now I can at least recognize how things feel in specific areas, and still so much work to be done. But
Yeah.
I, yeah, I realize that that is a common thing for many people, that they're like, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah,
So fascinating.
exactly. It is, isn't it?
Fascinating.
I know it's incredible. I feel so grateful to be in a position of being able to learn this information, and then being able to bring it to people, and see the shifts and opportunities it opens up. So yeah, thank you, Carolyn. This has been fun to get to talk with you about today and share this with our community. And so really, I thank you for that.
Absolutely. Wonderful conversation. And I learned so much. I can't wait to, learn more along with you. So this is going to be fun.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Carolyn. Appreciate that. All right. Well, this was fun. So we'll look forward to seeing everybody again soon. Thank you for watching and listening today. We appreciate you.
Yes, thank you.